We all know how catastrophic the Columbia disaster was, but you won't believe how much of it was NASA's fault. Like the rest of the space shuttle fleet, Columbia was attached to a 153-foot-long external fuel tank with 2 umbilical fittings and a titanium bipod coated with low-density foam. This foam layer served dual purposes, insulating the cryogenic propellants inside the tank to maintain their low temperatures and reducing aerodynamic drag during the shuttle's ascent. At 81.7 seconds into the Columbia's launch, a large piece of this foam detached from the left external tank bipod. It struck the shuttle's left wing 0.2 seconds later, damaging the reinforced carbon-carbon panels.
One can't help but ask, is that part of the wing coming apart?
The strike, which the crew members were informed of in the following week, had no impact on the successful 16-day mission and remained of limited concern throughout the voyage. But upon re-entry on February 1st, the damaged panel allowed superheated air to rush into the thermal protection system and melt the interior.
FYI, I've just lost 4 separate temperature transducers on the left side of the vehicle. All 4 of them are located in the aft part of the left wing.
The first debris sightings occurred at 8:53 a.m. near the border of California and Nevada. Mission Control lost contact with the Columbia at 8:59 a.m., and the orbiter disintegrated shortly thereafter. Commander Rick Husband, pilot William C. McCool, mission specialists Michael P. Anderson, Kalpana Chawla, David M. Brown, Laurel Clark, and payload specialist Ilan Ramon lost their lives in the accident.
If you work in human spaceflight, this is the worst possible thing that could ever happen.
The Columbia Accident Investigation Board determined that institutional complacency led NASA operatives to express minimal concern about the foam strike, despite a design requirement that the external tank not shed foam or debris. It became clear that this requirement had not been fulfilled on Columbia's first launch in 1981, when debris shed the tank and destroyed over 300 heat-resistant tiles on the orbiter. This disturbed engineers, who observed that even the light touch of a thumbnail could dent parts of the thermal protection system.
One time, a large piece of foam from the gigantic fuel tank dented the solid rocket boosters on liftoff.
Foam strikes became so common that the space shuttle team grew to accept and even dismiss them, a complacency that sociologist Diane Vaughan termed the normalization of deviance, which refers to the pernicious acceptance of rule violations. The Columbia investigation established that foam strikes had occurred on every space shuttle launch to date, and the board recommended that authorities launch an aggressive program to eliminate all debris shedding, especially around the bipod struts.
That amount of foam coming off Shuttle Atlantis, this was the vehicle telling us something is wrong. Here's your warning.
The board found numerous safety shortcomings within the Space Shuttle program. For example, tests of the reinforced carbon-carbon system were deemed inadequate in measuring structural integrity, its supporting structure, and the attached hardware. The board also found that safety personnel were present but passive and didn't challenge others effectively, weakening the program's safety culture. Some of the poorest communication occurred in the mission evaluation room, where safety contractors were only minimally aware of the debris strike.
I think I was more angry than sad, thinking this didn't have to happen.
The board identified further faults in the debris assessment team for its, quote, stifled decentralized decision-making process and limited communication with the mission management team. However, they did note that problem-solving methods were extremely thorough in the Mission Control Center and mission management team, indicating some areas of effective operation. Ultimately, however, the report found that the shuttle program couldn't manage communication between the centralized and decentralized systems and even raised barriers that created communication blind spots, compounding safety concerns. The investigation noted that Mission Control couldn't measure the foam strike damage to Columbia's wing. The debris assessment team requested orbit images of the damaged wing, but their request was refused, and communication stalled around the team's mandatory need for Department of Defense imaging.
You have to understand, NASA works on procedures. We have a mission plan.
Such obstruction was another problem in NASA's questionable damage assessment infrastructure. The board took issue with the agency's use of the crater model, a computer simulation tool designed to measure ice damage to the external tank. During Columbia's 16 days in orbit, engineers used crater, which was essentially Apollo-era technology, to measure the foam strike damage. But the crater model used particles some 400 times smaller than the foam chunk that struck Columbia's left wing, rendering the risk assessment data functionally useless. The agency's failure to adopt more modern technologies for assessing damage directly contributed to the inability to address the foam strike.
NASA never wants to look stupid.
NASA wants to be the agency with the answers.
In fact, NASA's preference for dated and irrelevant simulation over empirical, first-hand analysis was among the greatest errors precluding the Columbia disaster. The report found that managers failed to develop a contingency plan to avoid a re-entry emergency. Space Shuttle leadership appeared to think nothing could be done, and no serious consideration was given to a rescue mission that could have retrieved the Columbia team or repaired the wing.
We train and try to prepare for the things that may go wrong, but there's always that unknown.
The board asked NASA to theorize rescue and repair missions, and they envisioned two scenarios. NASA underpinned the missions with the following narrative. On day 1, a debris strike is discovered. The following day, mission managers would request imagery from Columbia crew. If the imagery proved inconclusive, then by day 4, NASA would ask the crew to perform a spacewalk to investigate damage. If the spacewalk revealed potentially catastrophic damage, then the crew would prepare and ration consumables. From day 6 to day 26, the shuttle program would work around the clock to mobilize, launch, and execute the mission. NASA considered the repair mission to be high risk owing to the difficulty of the repair, a spacewalk with heavy components, and no guarantee that it would save the orbiter upon re-entry. A rescue mission had greater chances of success, although not without serious challenges. In any event, these contingencies would have been preferable to what happened on February 1st.
We all knew that if the engineers find out that this is bad, there is nothing we can do.
In their recommendations, the board proposed a new agency-wide training program to develop contingency plans for emergency scenarios involving crew and shuttle loss. In a highly critical summary, the investigation accused NASA of addressing none of the issues that caused the 1986 Challenger disaster.
Clearly, there is still evidence of a silent safety program with echoes of Challenger.
The agency's shift towards a more business-like mentality, with an emphasis on faster, better, cheaper, was identified as detrimental to maintaining the high standards of safety required for human spaceflight. This created significant potential for catastrophic issues, quote, with schedules, production pressures, deadlines, and cost efficiency goals elevated to the level of technical innovation and safety goals.
1 million movable parts, all working in synchronicity, which is kind of the fact that it ever worked at all is pretty amazing.
The board identified NASA's extreme can-do culture as a dangerous contributor to both the Challenger and Columbia disasters. Furthermore, the board observed a marked cultural shift in the organization that valued hierarchy and bureaucracy rather than the engineering expertise that steered the Apollo program to success in the 1960s. These patterns created a brew of austerity, bureaucracy, complacency, and ignorance that proved fatal for the 7 astronauts on February 1st, 2003.